Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 65 of the Citrix Session podcast. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got a group today. I got a couple of extra Citrix guys. I guess I got three Citrix guys, but of course I got Ben Rogers with me. Ben's the local sales engineer here in the Charlotte market. Ben, how's it going?
Good, Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Been a crazy day so far, but doing all right. Is the post-pandemic, I don't know if I can actually say that or not, but is the post-pandemic world coming to you? Are customers reaching out and trying to figure out how to get better at this stuff before it happens again?
Well, I think one of the things I'm seeing is a lot of customers are facing the fact that they're going to have to do something. 2020, the world kind of froze, and now you're starting to see people kind of, looking ahead and what's the future going to look like. I don't think that, we've had some companies that say we're going to stay in a work from home model. We've had some companies that go, we're going to get everybody back in the office as soon as we can. And most companies are kind of fitting in the middle. They're going to try to do a balance, and we've got to have employees come back on site, but we also want to make an offer of work from home where it makes sense. And what's interesting is I've talked to fellow employees like myself. I would love to go back to an office maybe 2-3 days a week just to interact, with people and be able to walk down the hall and ask questions to team members. So I'm noticing that employees are also embracing the idea of a mixed environment where they do 2-3 days in the office and they do 2-3 days at home, and you just mix it up. So things are starting to thaw out a little bit, but again, it's a challenging time. Customers are not really sure where things are going as the rest of us are. But you can't sit idle forever. So a little bit of waking up, but still a lot of questions.
So would you guys at Citrix, do you guys call that a hybrid model? Is that what are you officially calling that?
I think that sounds about right. And I think I would just echo a lot of what Ben said, where I don't think that we will see the work models that were prior to the pandemic, where the expectation was that all employees would be in the office 5 days a week. Or what we've seen during the pandemic, where everybody is working remotely 100% of the time. I think what we eventually land on is something in between the two, and we'll look a lot like what Ben outlined, where when it makes sense to be in the office, when you have meetings that are best handled face to face, you'll see people going into the office. But on days when you just need to put your head down and really be productive and knock some things out, I think you'll probably see a lot of people working from home on those days.
So that was the voice of Eric Kinney, and Eric's here to help us cover the podcast, cover the blog around security analytics, and with him is a guy named Alan Fermansky. And guys, I'll come back to you and introduce you real quick, but this has already started down an interesting road. I was at a party over the weekend, and one of the gentlemen there was a consultant, and his statement was, in their research, after the pandemic started, employee productivity, working from anywhere, working from home mostly, was about 90%. And his most recent study showed that we're down to about 4% productivity. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not. And to be frank, I think Citrix probably doesn't really care, right? I mean, Citrix wants to, as long as you're hybrid, right? You're sometimes working remote and sometimes working in the office. That's a win-win for Citrix, because if you're doing it right, you use it when you're in the office and you use it when you're remote, and it's all the same thing. So that works in Citrix's case. But that idea that people started out really frantic and really they were panicking about losing their jobs, so they worked really hard remote, and now they're taking half the day off every day. Do you buy into that at all?
I don't know if I'd buy into that, Andy. I feel like we've heard some instances of that. Many of the folks that I talk with, they find themselves working 9-10 plus hour days from home. And, by the time you turn around, it's lunch, then you turn around again, it's dinner, and right, where did the hours go? And of course, you save on the commute as well. I think the average American commute is still roughly an hour, just over an hour round trip. So it might vary depending on the geography or the industry, but definitely there is some signs of burnouts. We just need to be mindful overall.
Right. And I think Andy too, I think a lot of that is not necessarily work from home burnout, but it's pandemic burnout, where people don't have a lot of the same outlets that they had prior to the pandemic. And, I think everybody's ready for the next thing and ready to get back to normal life. And I think that's, if there has been a decrease in productivity, that's probably a more contributing function than actually just working from home.
And I think that's
Andy,
Ben just alluded
I want
to
to
that.
add
Ben said
something here.
well, you said you want to go back to an office. I think that's what they just said, like part-time in the office. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I mean, one of the things I also want to say to kind of answer that question is, I think it also determines the company you work for. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Citrix here. And I think Alan and Eric would agree with this sentiment is, your company kind of has to meet you in the middle a little bit and keep you motivated. And that's one good thing that Citrix has done. For me personally, Citrix has kept a ball in front of me. It's kept me reaching for that ball. It's given me, tasks to perform to get to that ball, measurements of those tasks. So the companies that expect their employees to go at home and keep at the same pace and not try to motivate them or manage them, those are the ones that are going to see these huge drops in productivity, like you're saying. I think a company like ours, and I'm sure your company is geared towards the same, they're keeping the employees busy by challenging the employees. They're not just letting us sit at home idle, twiddling our thumbs. We have objectives we need to make. There's projects we need to work on, and they're continuously putting those things in front of us. And I think that's what's kept Citrix's productivity up is, you're either going to do the work or you're not. And if you're not, that's going to show. And so I don't know, Alan and Eric, what have you seen on your side with that?
I agree with you. I think it really comes down to you have a motivated workforce, but like anything, right? You need to have moderation. You need to ensure that they have the right resources available. And I agree and definitely commend Citrix and our teams that have continued to really inspire us and ensure that we have the tools across the board, be it health resources, wellness resources, just making sure that we're able to stay productive and stay healthy, right? Because it's a state of mind, it's a physical state, and it's hard to believe, right? It's been almost a year since we've had the work from home mandate, and no clear instruction on our end when we'll actually be hopefully getting back to this so-called hybrid work model. So yeah, absolutely.
One last thing I would add, Andy, is that I think it also depends on how the organization is defining productivity. I think prior to the pandemic, a lot of times productivity was measured by how many hours you sat in a seat in the office, and obviously that's not the case anymore with everybody working remotely. So I know at Citrix we're mainly focused on outcomes and not necessarily how much time you're online during a specific day. So I think that's one of the things that everybody, if we can just kind of develop a common language around what productivity means, that'll also help us measure outputs for people that are working home versus not working at home.
Yeah, so a couple things, right? So one quick plug. I'm working with the guys at iGel to do a workout from home. So we've got a group of folks that have started a online workout company during all this, and they're actually going to, I believe, partner with iGel or one of my other vendors, and they're going to offer online workout as part of the work from home go to market. So that should be interesting. So stay tuned for that. And then let me do this for you guys real quick. Bill Sutton joined us. He's our director of services at XenTegra. Bill, where did most of your folks and yourself work from prior to the pandemic?
From home mostly, although many of my consultants went on site with customers as needed. I worked from home for the most part because that's our model, but at least for those of us that are remote. But most of my consultants were going on site where practical, even out of town some, but all of that ended, of course, in March.
And so what I'm getting at there, and I could go around to Ben and Eric and Alan as well and say, okay, where did you guys work from prior to the pandemic? I think it's interesting, companies like XenTegra, companies like Citrix, where a large part of the workforce worked remotely anyway, we didn't skip a beat. Yep. It's those that are, for example, the guy I was talking to this weekend, he does consulting for call centers, and it was those folks that went from a call center cubicle to working from home. That's the area where he saw massive drop off in productivity recently once they realized that their job wasn't at stake the way they thought it was originally.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
See, that's kind of wild to hear. Well, that's kind of wild to hear to me because, like, let's take healthcare for an example, and you've got to move your appointment people to home. That's like a call center. They're in a queue and they're receiving calls. If the person wasn't in queue, wouldn't it show that they wasn't receiving that many phone calls? So there would be a lot of questions I'd have around, the productivity loss. Now, I do want to ask you, you said right at the start of the pandemic, employee productivity was at 90%. This consultant told you it dropped 4% or it's down to 4%?
he talked about it dropping down to 4%, single digits. That was the
Jeez.
that was the interesting thing. Now, whether he knew what he was talking about, I don't know, but it made for good wedding shower talk. But you know, honestly, guys, I somewhat believe him. I think I was in outside sales one time in a job where I wasn't busy, and it was up to me to go crush it every day. And I found myself walking around the mall more than one time going, man, I don't want to go back and do that anymore. It'll be interesting. So, you know what, here's the reason why I went down this whole conversation with you guys. What we're talking about here is analytics and the ability to make sure our users are being able to do their work, it's working appropriately, and that they are working, and that and then it's secure. Nothing says that better than what Citrix is doing with security and performance analytics. Would you guys agree?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So let's do this real quick. Alan, well, first of all, the blog that we're reviewing today is called Citrix Analytics for Performance, Delivering True Value for Customers. Eric was nice enough to jump on as well because, you know, we shouldn't talk about any of this stuff without making sure we're covering our security bases. But Alan, you want to give us just a quick background on yourself and what led you to write this blog?
Sure, Andy, be glad to. So brief history of myself, I'm a longtime Citrite, been with the company going on 13 plus years now across a variety of roles, product management, marketing, services, and alliances, among others. And analytics is one of my focus areas, specifically performance analytics. And the idea of this particular blog came directly from internal and external feedback around, hey, where does analytics really fit across the broader spectrum of offerings with things like Director, things like HDX Insight, and really helping folks understand the value and the why around Citrix Analytics. And then we just kind of iterated from there.
Yeah. Alan, what's the most valuable thing in the world today?
I believe it's time.
Well, when you run out of it, it certainly is time, and everybody has to realize that. I mean, that's something I struggle with big time. I work way too much. But what's the most valuable commodity in the world today?
Well, for organizations, it's their people, right?
And I'm sorry to run you down that. I should have kind of staged you for that. It's data. It used to be oil. Like the statement, oil was the most valuable thing on the planet. It's actually data now that's the most valuable thing on the planet, according to a lot of researchers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fair. Data, and perhaps more specifically, making sense of the data, right? We're bombarded with all this data every day. Your traditional IT systems are generating vast amounts of data, but how do you sift through it all, right? How do you make sense of it and then determine what's actually something that you can act upon as an organization? That, I think, is the real key. And that's where our Citrix Analytics offering comes in. It's cloud-based. It delivers value for both on-premise customers and cloud customers, and really helps them unlock the true value of their data. In fact, for many of our customers, it's their first foray into a Citrix cloud service, and it literally pays for itself in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Hey, so this is great. And unfortunately, and if you guys can see my webcam, I'm kind of smiling and joking when I say that. Unfortunately, we had to include Eric because you can't have this conversation without securing all of it. So Eric, can you give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've been with Citrix for almost 8 years now in a number of different product marketing roles. Been fortunate enough to have been on this podcast previously talking about some workspace security capabilities, specifically app protection. So happy to be a return guest to the podcast, Andy. And as similar to Alan, I'm now focusing on Citrix Analytics for security, and I think it's really interesting that we've just been talking for a few short minutes here about just some of the challenges that people have been facing in terms of two big ones: remote work and also call centers. And just been talking with a lot of our sellers like Ben. And a lot of our customers as well. Those are two of the big, kind of primary use cases for security analytics. I think when people, left the office, there was a big concern about visibility into what people were doing and protecting that valuable data that they're producing. And analytics made a lot of sense as a tool to get that extra visibility, to get an understanding of what these users were doing outside the network and on their own devices and with different applications that were being delivered to them. And then on the insider use case front, I think that the call center is the perfect example where these are employees that have really privileged access, that they need that access to do their jobs effectively, but they are accessing really sensitive data, whether it be credit card numbers, personally identifiable information, birthdays, addresses, all stuff that can fetch a fair price on an illicit market. And this is stuff that we need to give access to those call center employees to, like I said, to do their jobs effectively. And because they have that privileged access, recognizing what is just normal work and what is somebody trying to steal data to go sell it or just to wreak havoc can be a tricky proposition. And like Alan said, being not only being able to generate the data to look at the activity, to understand the patterns that people are undertaking to do their daily work, but being able to recognize the pattern and then knowing what action to take when somebody is acting, what like they shouldn't, or trying to steal data, that can be a tricky proposition. So, having a tool like analytics that can recognize that behavior and then automate the activity behind that to prevent data loss has become a really valuable tool in these different and challenging times.
Yeah. So let me do this to kind of level set, and then we'll take off into the podcast. We haven't gotten started yet, really. I find often that a lot of people who work in technology do not understand that the concept of people in IT is to enable the other employees with technology to do their job better, be more productive, and work better while maintaining some level of security that they don't know that they need, whether they realize it or not. I tons of stories to talk about there, but that's the conversation I have with a lot of folks in IT, that it's not just about them and what engineering they can do, it's what they're doing to support the organization that really matters. And part of that is providing security, whether the individual realizes it, knows it or not. Ideally, they don't even know it, but somebody's doing it on their behalf. So let's do this. So Alan, you jumped into the webinar, excuse me, the blog, been a long day already, and you start talking in the beginning about monitoring techniques from Citrix, and I think this is really good because it's not just Citrix Analytics, right? It's Citrix Director, HDX Insight, and Citrix Analytics. So from a performance perspective, Alan, let's hit those one at a time. Citrix Director, what does that mean to the listeners?
Absolutely, that's a great plan, Andy. So Citrix Director, that's our daily monitoring console. This has evolved from literally over 10 decades worth of innovation that we've done, dating all the way back to the XenDesktop 5.0 release for those on the call that remember that. And Director's all around really understanding the state of the union. What's the environment at? Providing the appropriate tools for help desk staff to take action on sessions, to shadow users as needed, and really understand what's happening from a report perspective as well, looking at some basic trending information, understanding what the load levels are, and then it also has the ability to set specific alerts. So if you're hitting specific CPU thresholds or memory thresholds in the environment, you can go ahead and be alerted on those particular conditions, and that works naturally hand in hand with the other management console of our studio. So fantastic offering. HDX Insight, this is one more on the network side because a network is an absolutely critical aspect to performance. And I could tell you so many stories coming from support and services where even admins will say, oh, my user sessions are slow, right? And then you go down this path, okay, you have to uncover all this information or what's going on. And then it could take days or weeks later to really understand. So the having appropriate data and making sense of the data really helps you. Now, HDX Insight, as I note in my blog, really helps you to answer fundamental questions around the network, like which users are consuming excessive bandwidth, for example, and why. Maybe that's due to, say, larger print jobs, or maybe they're working with high-end graphics and multi-monitor scenarios. There could be some opportunity to tweak some of our HDX-specific settings there. You can also look at a breakdown of the virtual channel distribution and really optimize the network, looking at things like round-trip latencies as well. So that's your Director, that's your HDX Insight. And
Hey, can I comment on that one real quick?
Absolutely.
My favorite thing to talk about with HDX Insight is it's an intentional man-in-the-middle attack to find out what's happening on both ends, on both sides of the equation. Is that a pretty fair, accurate way to say it?
Yeah, that is an accurate way to say it. In fact, from an architectural perspective, right, traditionally with the ADC appliance and handling the app flow records are literally kind of like a man in the middle, inspecting what's happening and making sense of it. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
And that's the one thing that Citrix can do that the others can't, because Citrix is the only one that's actually sitting in the actual middle.
Correct. And not just sitting in the middle, but having the insight and the depth to go very deep into our own industry standard ICA protocol and the complete HDX stack. Yes.
All right, so number 3, and I really want to know when we're going to talk about Edge Site, but that's a different topic. That's a joke for those listening and those that are old like me.
I laughed out loud, Andy.
I mean, if you really want to talk about it, we can, but
I don't ever want to hear that word again. I can't believe it came out of my own mouth. Citrix Analytics is number 3. Help us understand where Citrix Analytics ties those others together, adds a whole nother level of it. Help us understand.
Sure. Be glad to do that. So Citrix Analytics, it came about as part of really this internal opportunity and discovery a few years ago. And what we found is that, again, you have all this data and some consoles, but no real actionable insights. And we know with the power of the cloud and machine learning, we felt it represented a huge opportunity for us to create offerings that would enable customers to be more proactive and be more actionable around all the data that's in the environment. And that's where Citrix Analytics came from, both the performance analytics and the security analytics, making sense of all the data from the performance side, working within the confines of your apps and desktops environment, be it on-premises and or cloud-based, the ability to aggregate multiple environments and giving you that single pane of glass. Now, how does this differ from Director and Insight? Well, while some of the data that's subsumed and consumed within Citrix Analytics is similar, Citrix Analytics is far broader and far deeper. And then it applies the power of machine learning to make proactive recommendations. So with performance analytics, really identifying which machines haven't been able to accept connections in consecutive terms. So looking at what's called the black hole VDAs, looking at machines that are maybe more problematic from a resource perspective. And this can be common for non-standardized machines, like maybe you have your dedicated machines or dedicated VDIs, or maybe you're having some hardware issues or capacity issues in your environment. And a director will show you the general lay of the land, so to speak, but it's not going to specifically tell you, go look on this particular virtual machine because it hasn't been accepting connections and drain users and fix the issue. Or you're having issues that may pertain to RDS licensing, and being very prescriptive on how you can go about remedying issues in your environment, maximize performance, maximize user productivity, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, going back to my comment a while ago around taking that data and making it something that's consumable. I think we said this with Matt the other day, just the amount of effort that goes into really doing that, and then Citrix trying to make it easier and easier for the user to do, or for the admin to do. And I was going to say this real quick. Bill, I know I've asked you this on the podcast before. Have you ever actually seen an ICA black hole, which is what Alan was referring to a minute ago, when you can't accept, like it says you can take connections, but you can't? Have you ever seen one?
Yes.
How many have you seen?
Just a few.
Yeah.
Over time.
I've seen one, and it was bad. Like nobody could figure out what was going on. It actually ended up just being a reboot, fixed it.
Exactly.
But that's the one that everybody's been always scared of, and it's lurking, waiting for all of us. And it's a really bad day because you can't figure out what's going on when that happens. Absolutely. Hey, Ben Rogers, you heard Alan talk about these 3. Any thoughts or comments on these and what you're seeing in the real world?
Well, my one comment is, you know, in my past history, I was a director, so I implemented QRadar. And the thing that was interesting about QRadar is that, you know, you had to do the same thing you have to do with our analytic engine. You had to get data in there. So you had a period of time where you're kind of sitting back collecting all this. QRadar was a bear because after you got the collection done and you started to try to normalize things, you had to create all those normalization rules yourself. So it was very intense from a rule perspective to get the product up and running. What I like about Citrix Analytics products is it starts to do some of that massaging for you right out of the gate. It starts to tie some of these things together in the view mode. And then when you're ready to start action and you're ready to hit that switch to have it start to remediate some of these things, you kind of, to our security, and then you start to see where they're correlated across all our different products. So my point being is that our analytic engine is going to make it far easier to start to consume this data, be able to tell what's going on with this data, and be able to make some good guesses, where some of the other products, like I've used in my past, i.e. QRadar, it's very difficult to get that pane of glass where you feel comfortable that you've got all the product sets under it, all the product sets are reporting back, and you're able to make sense of it. I think Matthew had a good word for it. Citrix is not playing log fatigue like some of the other analytic applications do. We're looking at different measurements instead of just looking at those logs coming and try to dissect those logs.
Yeah, I almost equated to I don't know, like a table or something with 4 legs, and it seems pretty simple. Or maybe a pool table with three slabs of slate, or even 2 slabs, but 3 slabs, and it's easy to get it together. Getting it balanced and doing what you really wanted to do, that's a whole other topic. So, Eric, the 3 tools we talked through here, are those 3 very much involved in your side of the equation too, on the security analytics side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty cohesive story. And I mean, you're talking about with performance analytics and all the other tools that with Director and HCX Insights, making sure that things are available for users so they can stay productive. But I do think with analytics, while we're less reliant on those tools, it's a cohesive story, and one that all goes together, because obviously, as we talked about before, if you're providing access to everything and ensuring that productivity is high with access to all these tools, but not securing it properly, in the long term, that's not going to be a winning proposition for any of our customers. So, I do think those stories go pretty well together.
Okay, well, the next section of the blog, and just to our time check here, we got about 20 minutes. We did an awesome thing, right? We had this casual conversation in the beginning that I hopefully added some context or content, or added, again, it's been a very long day, just kind of set people up for what we were going to talk about later. Alan, am I losing my mind here, or is the table that's in the blog, the column slightly shifted off?
They were slightly, you were not losing your mind, at least not on that front. They were slightly shifted off, and I believe we had our blog folks get that adjusted. It was just a slight glitch, but in any case,
you're right. A quick refresh of the browser.
But
you've got a table here with across the top, it talks about the criteria, and then it names those 3 tools one column at a time. And the first concept is the criteria of purpose. So I guess this is a pretty table. Is there anything, what do you want to cover that's in this table that you think is extremely insightful for the podcast here?
Sure, absolutely. So feel free to check out the blog if you'd like, but I feel like the key items here are that Citrix Analytics brings the intelligence and the machine learning to all the data, right? So again, like we said, making sense of it, providing the proactive, actionable insights. It's also important to know it's still a common misconception, but Citrix Analytics it can be used for on-premises or cloud-based environments. And in fact, for most customers, they are taking advantage of it with on-premises environments. And it's, like I said, the first foray into Citrix Cloud.
So Alan, maybe I should say this, and let me ask the question. So Citrix Analytics is really a cloud-based service from Citrix that aggregates stuff from the cloud and other parts of the cloud, other services, and aggregates on-premises things that are happening into this cloud-based service, so that it makes it easier for the customer to consume, right?
Absolutely. So we have our performance analytics that's tied, at least today, with the apps and desktops offering, be it on-prem or cloud. And the security analytics, it's more holistic across the workspace because naturally security touches many additional areas, including the content collaboration and some of the other Citrix Cloud services.
Is there anything I'm giving up if I'm on premises and using Citrix Analytics? Is there anything from a performance and/or a security perspective that I just can't get? I can't get.
No, you essentially have the same capabilities on premises as you would have with a apps and desktop service cloud environment or any of the other Citrix Cloud services. We're ingesting all the data and we're using the same algorithms to provide the proactive insights for our customers.
So Alan, how are you getting the data from on-prem to the cloud?
Great question. So for the on-prem environments, we are working with the connector, and then you basically onboard your environment through a simple process as part of our settings within the connection, and then literally within maybe a few minutes time, the data will begin flowing to the Citrix Cloud Control Plane, all securely over port 443. And of course, for some of our perhaps international listeners, we have full GDPR compliance, and we take the data transmission incredibly serious, both encrypted, in transit, and at rest.
Perfect.
So no hard work on the customer side. It can all just get there and be ready to consume and ready to be tweaked and consumed even further, right?
Exactly. And what we've seen is that for many customers, this is something that they'll set up. Unlike Director, where we kind of coined the term, that's your daily monitoring console, right? So you're in there pretty much every day, or if not you as an admin, then certainly your help desk staff is in there tending to the sessions and doing that sort of thing. The analytics, it's something that you absolutely could go in every day, but for many customers, we've seen that once they've set up their environment and they have the appropriate actions and alerts from the security perspective, they're reaping the benefits even if they don't log in. I mean, certainly we want customers to log in and view reports and make sense of the data, but all the back-end intelligence is doing a lot of the work for them. In fact, we have a number of customer stories where customers have realized insights and seen security benefits and performance benefits for things that they weren't even expecting, pleasantly surprised that the environment was catching things for them and pointing them down the right path.
You know, is there anything else in this table that you think should jump out at people and they should make sure they consume and not skip over?
Well, I feel like one of the things to understand is that it is a quick on-ramp to Citrix Analytics, regardless of which environment you're onboarding, or with many customers, we have multiple environments that you're aggregating and bringing together. So I feel like we covered the key points here in the table. And for traditional Citrix admins, this is going to be a very straightforward transition for them to start benefiting from all that data and insights.
So I don't know if you saw in the chat window just now, but I was reading a cloud book a couple weeks ago, and the guy stops and points out the difference between on-prem and on-premises. I had no idea that most people in IT use that incorrectly.
Yeah, we've had some folks point these things out. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I'm not trying to be a jerk there, but
No.
When somebody pointed it out to me, I'm like, holy crap! I've been using the word on-prem wrong. It's actually on-premises.
Yeah,
on-prem is a totally different thing.
Yep.
All right. So it says here, in summary, Director is essential and will show mostly what aspects your environment HCX Insights show, more of what aspects. That's my man in the middle attack, and then analytics is getting all that stuff into a place where you can actually digest it and actually give it to nourishment to the body of what the customer's trying to do, right?
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
So one of the sections here, you jump into a lot of graphs, which I think you've kind of talked around a little bit, and that's the UI experience and what's kind of there by default and what you can continue. So this section is called What's Unique About Citrix Analytics. I think you've covered that, but is there more?
Yeah, so a few things that would be worth touching on. Some of the unique elements are the prescriptive elements that you'll find under the dashboard. So I do show a screenshot in the blog where you can clearly see an environment where we've detected failures, so the black hole machines, as well as communication errors. So if users aren't able to establish a connection to their backend VDA, why, and then which component in the connection process is the actual failure component, what's the culprit there. So very intuitive, very prescriptive. And then I think the other thing that's worth pointing out here is that with analytics, we have a very active roadmap. We're releasing tangible features every quarter that customers can take advantage of. Things like the ability to quickly create and save customized queries in the self-service area. That's been a real popular thing since we introduced that recently. Now you can create your own queries to look up criteria around high latencies or look at users that have the worst experience. And you can even save those or maybe create some executive level reports that you could send to upper management to get a feel for how the environment is trending. And then ultimately, as we've seen, you're identifying the user experience across your estate and then driving down the number of users that have poor experience while increasing those that have excellent experience.
Cool. Eric, Ben, Bill, any additional comments to that?
I was going to ask about the prescriptive recommendations, but I think Alan just covered it, particularly around the black hole effect and how it helps us point to the user or point to the issue. Does it provide guidance? Because I haven't looked at it myself, guidance on how to address it, or is it more pointing you to the core of the issue?
Yeah, so it points you to the component, not only the component or machine that is having an issue, but it does provide recommended actions. So, for example, if it's an RDS licensing issue, if it has to do with hung services, so it'll make some recommendations, and then based off those recommendations, you'll be able to take the appropriate action on those machines, and then of course track it over time, see how it's trending.
Okay, yeah, I see that now in one of the images that you posted, the recommended steps. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, black hole machines, it's one of these things that maybe doesn't creep up quite that often, but when it does creep up, you can invest quite a bit of time and IT resources in tracking down these types of issues where they can literally be prevented or very quickly resolved with performance analytics. From the communication error side with performance analytics, understanding the components in the pathway. If customers are using gateway service or if they're using their own ADC, again, doesn't matter if this is cloud-based or on premises, making sense of all that data, or if maybe a VDA is overloaded. I had the opportunity recently to do a segment on TechZone Live where I covered the noisy neighbor problem, right? Where you've got the one user that's running an Excel macro and pegging the CPU, and that affects the other users on that host. Then they call the help desk. Then it costs the company money. Performance analytics can very quickly pinpoint these types of issues. Then you can implement something like the Citrix Workspace Environment Management to resolve the issue. And 1, 2, 3, you're done. Again, providing that additional visibility, whereas just the out-of-the-box tools, if you will, aside from analytics, is not going to give you that kind of prescriptive nature.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Ben, you had something you want to chime in with?
Yeah, I mean, I know one person said that they didn't see this being used as like a daily thing. We just had an incident with a POC that we were running where we were having performance issues in the POC, and we really couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from. We turned on performance analytics. Within about 5 minutes, we saw that we were having profile lag. And then when they started digging into the profiles, they were able to realize that, there were things in the profiles that didn't necessarily need to be stored there. And they were able to clean the profiles, and that increased performance. So I do see this being a little bit of a knock tool where, that support phone rings, the administrator can pick up the phone, and then they can start looking at this and going, okay, Mary Jane's reporting this, but do I have 10 Mary Janes, and are all 10 Mary Janes having the same issue? And to Alan's point, this thing will tell you, like in our incident, it immediately showed us profile bloat. And when we started going in and looking at the profiles, it was like, okay, here's exactly where the problem was. And I'm not 100% sure that we would have uncovered that problem if we had not turned on this tool and gotten that feedback from the tool.
Yeah, that's a great story.
And I love that story as well. I'll also use this as a moment to chime in with one of my things that customers should do, and that is, if Mary Jane's logged into Citrix and she's seeing slow logins, but Bob, the Citrix admin, never actually uses Citrix, or his boss never uses it, shame on Bob. You guys get what I'm talking about there? Where if you're selling this stuff, if you're the guy who's implementing this stuff for your customers, you should be also using it. And that's one of the best ways to find when things aren't working. Just like in this case, analytics is doing that for you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Well, Andy, you shamed me many years ago when you walked in my office and saw me using a PC and wondered why I wasn't using a thin client. And I think on the very next visit that you came back, you saw that I had put a thin client on my desk. So I agree with you. When you came and saw me, you asked me, why was I not eating my own dog food? And that resonated with me. So I hear you, man. The administrators do have to experience the environment so that they understand what frustrations the users are going through.
At least part of the time. And even if you get a persistent desktop, that's better than not using any of the solution at all. Sorry, I just had to go on a tangent there, guys. Okay. Well, Alan, I apologize ahead of time for asking this question, but I'm gonna make it all work out, okay?
Okay, go for it.
Now he's like, oh Lord, what's he gonna ask? So, Alan, this isn't included with my Workspace or CVAD subscription, is it?
So it's not included with any other offerings. It is a value add. So we have performance analytics and security analytics as separate add-ons, or we do have a discounted bundle where you can take advantage of both of the analytics offerings together, which many customers choose to do. And what you're probably alluding to, it's the why, right? So why is this an add-on? Well, so from our side, these offerings are tangible cloud value that we believe provide solutions are above and beyond what you get, quote, in the box. The machine learning capabilities, notably, customers ask us, especially many large customers. We have analytics customers from the SMB all the way up to large multinational telecommunications companies, and they ask, well, hey, why can't we just run analytics on premises? And the answer comes down to having the massive amount of compute power and sheer agility required to do the types of calculations that we're doing is just frankly not only not possible and not realistic to do on premises. So it is a value add, but as I believe I mentioned earlier on, we have a number of stories in which customers have quickly realized value and seeing that this solution pays for itself very, very quickly in productivity and security.
And Eric, I'll give you, Alan, Eric, I can only remember who asked the question. Here's the point. We talked about in the beginning, data is extremely valuable, but only if you can consume it and digest it. Citrix has every right on the planet to expect to get paid for that because it costs money and there's value in it. It's all about data, right? Data and the value of data.
So on the security side, I'm sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, kind of to the point, man, this thing can also do remediation. This thing can stop attacks. So it's not just a reporting tool. I mean, there's some instances, especially dealing with ransomware, if you have your data stored in Citrix files, we can sense that and actually stop an attack. So, not only is the value of being able to digest data, analyze data, tell what the data is going on, but in certain cases, we can actually stop attacks that are happening in the environment and remediate that.
Yeah. That's a fantastic comment. In fact, Eric, maybe you can tell everyone about some of the customer stories and wins we've had, like with Kaizen.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of and Kaizen and what Ben's saying. When you look at ransomware specifically, I think I read the other day that the average what people are paying in terms of ransom is about $800,000 in terms of what the cost of a ransomware attack is. In addition to what you're actually going to have to pay out of pocket, if you do decide to pay the attackers off, the average ransomware attack results in 16 days of business downtime. And when we talk to our customers, that's the number that really resonates is when they're thinking about the revenue they're producing on a daily basis and what being down for 16 days actually would mean to their business, because in a lot of cases it would really cripple it and just put a huge dent in that business. So, if you avoid just one of those attacks, you've got you're getting immediate, kind of return on your investment. And I think also too, Andy, to go back to an earlier point that you made just about the role of IT within the organization and being able to process data. I think, a lot of people that are outside of IT look at IT as break fix. I'm locked out of my account, my computer doesn't work, just something very tactical to help them get through a specific issue that they're having. But with the case of analytics, whether it be performance or security, because we're processing all that data and providing prescriptive actions and ways to correct any sort of issues that you might be coming across, it really takes them out of that reactive mode where they're just kind of responding to things that are broken, and helps them put that in that proactive mode, because they're not spending all this time just looking at log files and trying to resolve issues. Citrix Analytics is taking care of that for them in a lot of instances, which allows them to focus their time on a lot more valuable sorts of projects.
Yeah, a lot of people think that IT in an organization is a cost center. Well, turn it off for a few minutes, see what happens to the business.
Right.
Okay, well, guys, we're about to run out of time here. Alan, parting thoughts? You got in the blog here, it talks about how to give this thing a go. Maybe hit that.
Yeah, let's do that. So, of course, we encourage everyone to try analytics for themselves. You'll never know until you actually see it and experience it with data from your own environment. It's very easy. Just go to analytics.cloud.com and you can try out the service, both for performance analytics and for security analytics. And then just a quick plug for all the work we do on our side regarding customer stories. If you go to citrix.com/customers, we've got stories on performance analytics, customers like Compare Financial that were able to detect poor performance from their remote workforce and easily, quickly implement a fix, night and day difference according to them. Also security analytics stories as well. So take a read through that, try the demo, and let us know what you think. We're glad to help from our side in product marketing any way we can to ensure successful implementations.
It's definitely one of those things where you try it, you're going to see the value in it almost instantly, and more than likely you're going to be hooked, right? That's a good thing. Means it's a good thing, good product. Eric, before we let you go, what from a security side, and we'll probably have you on again at some point, but what from a security perspective, what would you want listeners to know around analytics?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of Alan's sentiments around checking out those customer stories and seeing how it's applied to them in the real world, taking advantage of the trials so they can get their hands on it and see what it's like for themselves. And then also just to have an understanding that the more that you invest in workspace, the more valuable analytics becomes, and in turn, the more valuable your workspace becomes. When you're able to get those insights from your virtual apps and desktops, from content collaboration, from endpoint management, from gateway, you get a really robust data set that's going to give you a really 360-degree view of what's happening with each one of your users. So definitely encourage people just to adapt as many components of the workspace as possible, especially if you're one of those premium plus customers, because when you combine that with analytics, you are really going to get a rich data set that's really going to help you secure all the data that you have.
Here's one way to look at that. You as a company, not you, but a customer chooses Citrix as a strategic partner. Then they invest in Citrix Workspace, maybe just for VDI, but for maybe the whole entire workspace concept as a strategic decision. If you don't then turn around and get the analytics, both performance and security, out of that strategic decision, you probably didn't quite get across the finish line. Would you guys agree with that?
100%.
For sure.
Well, good. When I practiced that in the shower this morning, it worked.
Paid off for you.
All right. Ben Rogers, before we let you go, anything else?
No, I would kind of backbone with what Eric said. I mean, you and I just had a conversation with one of my customers that wants to use Intune as the MDM, but we've convinced him to use CME to manage his Intune. And the reason we did that is so that he could get the analytics coming off of CME so that he could see what was going on in his MDM and MAM environment. So again, the more of these products you have, the better visibility you're going to have in your environment. My other part, departing statement here is that for the administrators, this is easy. This is not a mountain to climb. This is not something that you're going to have to get in there and tweak with a bunch of settings, and you're going to have to come up with reports and all the thresholds and all that. A lot of this is built in. And like I said, for one customer that I've used this for already, within 5 minutes of having the environment up, we very quickly saw what was going on. So give it a trial. I think you'll get in, you'll see how easy it is, how easy it is to consume the data, and you might find something in your environment that would shock you.
So Ben, are you saying this is easier than setting up Edge Site?
Well, Andy, I never crossed the Edge Site bridge in my old environment. So, you know, I can't comment on that, but I do know, like,
It was just a joke. I just want to hear Eric and Alan laugh again.
I will say though,
yeah.
I was skeptical of this, you know, coming from the customer side. And then when we turned it on, you know, I was kind of like, well, we're kind of grasping for straws now. And then when we got into it, and you know, again, you can open up one of these user experience cards, and you can see why their experience is bad. And so we, you know, again, saw profile bloat. And when we started digging in, I was just amazed. So it took, you know, up until that point, hours and hours and hours of questions and talking and, you know, digging in. And then finally, as a last resort, we brought this in, and it turned out to be the silver bullet. And so I was instantly a fan and instantly impressed.
All right, Bill, so our listeners don't think I'm an idiot because I keep beating this joke to death. This is better than Edge Site, right?
Oh, without question, Andy. You know, that's a rhetorical question. No, what I would say as a parting thought is that customers, you know, that have on-premises solutions, which we have a number of those. We also have a lot that are in the cloud, but either one, it sounds like the ramp to try this out is not significant. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at it, and we can help you take a look at it. I think this is, particularly on the performance side, a fantastic tool to use in the tool belt that gives us the proactive view of things before users start calling that we've always wanted. So kudos to Citrix for really getting this where it is, and of course on the security side, being able to detect those anomalies that would largely go undetected and be able to act on them much more quickly is of course a huge benefit as well.
Yeah, I'll kind of wrap it up, and I'll use my Edge Site joke one more time. This might be the only time I ever get to use it again. I was a Citrix sales engineer, Ben's role back in the day. I can specifically remember 2 days, 2 different customers, spending a whole day getting Edge Site up and working, and then another day trying to figure out what in the world we needed to get out of it. Eric and Alan, I'm sure you guys can relate.
I personally can. I had worked with Edge Site in my tech support days, so yes. And here with analytics, there's no agent required, so you're good to go.
Yeah. So to Bill's, and that's really important too, right? Citrix is making it easy to bring all this together, not only from a plug and play, but the fact that the stuff you need is already in there. It's already ready to go. So guys, with that, I'll wrap it up, but I appreciate your time. Maybe we can have you guys back on again. You know, like Bill said, kudos to Citrix for making this better and easier, and kudos to those customers that have invested holistically in what Citrix is doing. They're the ones that are actually getting across the finish line and breaking the tape at the end of the 100-meter dash. All right, with that, guys, I'll wrap it up. Thank you again for your time, and thank you to the listeners for listening. Have a good day.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.